Hey friends, have you ever felt like you depend on others too much? Today I'm sharing the best lessons from How to Talk Like a Leader, a book that teaches us how to trust our own strength and grow confident in life. Stick with me for a quick review. You might just...
If your words fail to resonate, your voice will fall on deaf ears. A singular truth underscores the essence of effective communication. Leaders don't simply speak to be heard, they speak to be remembered. The distinction lies not in volume but in precision, clarity, strength, and timing. If your voice is disregarded, your ideas will falter. If your words lack substance, your presence will inspire nothing. This audiobook serves as your guide to crafting a voice that commands respect without needing to shout, a voice that sparks action without needing to impress, and a voice that resonates with people's minds and influences their decisions. You don't require an extensive vocabulary. You need strong, meaningful words. To truly lead, your words must first pave the way. This guide provides practical, direct communication skills that you can apply immediately in daily conversations, high-pressure situations, and leadership positions. It's about speaking with purpose, not speaking more. The goal is to communicate in a way that garners attention and inspires action, empowering you to lead now, not someday. It begins here. Chapter 1. To establish leadership, you must embody unwavering confidence in every word you say. That's where true leadership begins. If you speak, but your words lack weight, then you're merely creating noise, and noise fails to move people, change minds, or build trust. However, when you speak with unshakable confidence, every word matters, and people take notice, listen intently, lean in, and most importantly, remember. Confidence doesn't mean being boisterous. It doesn't mean showcasing your capabilities. It means standing behind your words, believing in what you're saying, and knowing that you've earned the right to be heard. If you don't genuinely believe in your message, why should anyone else? Confidence arises when you stop second-guessing yourself and take full responsibility for every word that leaves your mouth. Most people speak hesitantly, unsure of themselves, and use phrases like "I think maybe," "I guess," or "I'm not sure." Each time they do so, they dilute their message and lose credibility. The truth is, no one follows someone who sounds uncertain, no one invests in a message that appears shaky, and no one is inspired by someone who lacks conviction in their own voice. If you aspire to speak like a leader, you must assert that your words matter. You must mean what you say what you mean, and take full ownership of your message. When you speak, people need to feel that you're sincere, grounded, and that your words are a reflection of who you are and what you stand for. So, how do you achieve this? You begin by paying attention to the words you use every day. Most people speak out of habit, without purpose, but leaders speak with intention. You don't waste your words, you don't ramble, you don't water down your message. You speak directly, authentically, and with a presence that commands attention, as if you've earned the right to be listened to. Confidence in your words also stems from preparation. If you're unprepared, your voice will waver, and your message will falter. That's why leaders prepare, reflect, and get clear on their thoughts before speaking. They've already done the work, and their words gain power from being tested in their own experiences. Confidence also arises from alignment between your words and actions. Inconsistency between what you say and what you do will be noticed by others and eventually lead to self-doubt. You can't talk like a leader if you're not living like one, because people listen more to your example than your explanations. They listen more to how you live than to what you say. When your behavior backs up your words, you don't have to try so hard to sound confident. You become confident because you've earned it. Stop apologizing for your truth. Stop shrinking your message to make others comfortable. Leaders don't speak to be liked. They speak to be clear, to lead, and to make a difference. If you're always worried about what others think, you'll never say anything worth listening to. You don't have to be aggressive, but you do have to be firm. You have to be real, and that means owning your truth, even if not everyone agrees with it. When you walk into a room and speak, the room should feel it, not because you're loud, but because you're solid, steady, and people can sense that you're not just winging it. You've made decisions, built convictions, tested ideas, and now you speak from experience, not just opinion. That's what gives your words weight. It also means you stop using soft language to protect your ego. Cut out the fillers, cut out the uncertainty. If you believe in something, say it. If you stand for something, speak it. If something's not right, call it out. Too many people weaken their voice by trying to sound nice. But leadership isn't about sounding nice. It's about speaking what matters, even when it's uncomfortable. Confidence in your words also comes from being comfortable with silence. Weak speakers rush to fill every pause, fearing quiet, but strong communicators know that silence can be powerful. You say something important, then pause, giving people time to hear it, feel it, and let it sink in. You don't rush, you don't beg for approval. You say what needs to be said, and then you wait, and that silence speaks just as loudly as your words. Remember, your voice is your tool, not your crutch. You don't talk to prove yourself, you don't speak to look smart. You speak to serve a purpose and lead people towards something better. And when you know that your voice makes a difference, your tone shifts, and you stop performing. You start leading because now you're not talking to impress, you're talking to impact. Speaking like a leader isn't about using big words. It's not about having perfect grammar. It's not about showing off your vocabulary. It's about being clear, certain, and real. People follow that. People respond to that because in a world full of noise, real voices stand out. So, if you want to talk like a leader, start by owning every word you say. Stop outsourcing your voice. Stop doubting your message. Speak from your heart. Speak like you mean it. And every time you do, your confidence grows, your presence grows, and your leadership grows. When you take ownership of your words, you begin to own your space, and your presence transforms, radiating a quiet power that's evident in your demeanor, tone, and overall presence. You cease to try to sound like a leader. You become one, and this fundamental shift alters everything. Chapter 2. Speak clearly so no one misunderstands your message. That's one of the most crucial habits you can develop. To be a leader, have influence, or even just be taken seriously in your daily life, you need to master the art of clear speaking. It's not about using fancy words or complicated jargon. It's about being understood. When people comprehend what you're saying, they trust you, and when they trust you, they're more likely to listen. And when they listen, that's when things start to happen. However, if people can't grasp your message, it doesn't matter how brilliant your ideas are or how well-intentioned you are. If your words fall flat, you lose the moment, the connection, and the respect that comes with being a leader. And to make matters worse, people will start to fill in the blanks, often with interpretations that are far from favorable. That's why clarity is the key to success. Clear speaking means taking full responsibility for making your message clear. It's not about dumping information on people and expecting them to figure it out. Instead, you need to slow down, think before you speak, and strip away all the unnecessary fluff. You need to focus on being understood, not on sounding smart. Strong communication begins with this mindset, and most people never learn this crucial skill. They talk fast, ramble on, and assume others know what they mean. They skip steps in their explanation, leaving a trail of confusion in their wake, and then wonder why people don't follow them or trust them. To be a clear speaker, you need to be specific and avoid vague terms. Say exactly what you mean in one straight line, without overcomplicating it or trying to sound impressive. Clarity also means cutting out all the extra words that water down your point. If you can convey a big idea in a few words, don't use 50. If your message gets lost in too much talking, people will tune out, and once they stop listening, you lose their attention. Leaders don't waste attention. They get to the point and stay there. Speaking clearly means using words that people actually understand, not trying to sound intelligent with technical language. You need to speak their language and meet them where they are. If you're giving instructions to your team, explain it in a way that makes sense to them. If you're teaching someone something new, break it down into simple terms. This isn't about being condescending. It's about connecting with your audience, not confusing them. Rapid speech is a major obstacle to clear speaking. It diminishes the impact of your words, causes sentences to blend together, and can lead to listeners missing crucial information. A measured pace, on the other hand, conveys control and thoughtfulness, allowing your audience to absorb your message. Insecurity often drives fast talking, but leaders don't rush. They pause, let their words settle, and make people lean in. You also need to be aware of your tone. Your tone carries meaning that your words alone can't convey. You can say the right words with the wrong tone, and people will still take it the wrong way. Or you can say something simple with a strong tone, and it will hit hard. Is your attitude made audible? If your tone is all over the place, too flat, too angry, or too unsure, your message loses clarity. People won't know what to take seriously and what to ignore. Another reason people fail to speak clearly is that they get caught up trying to say everything at once. You don't need to tell the whole story in one breath. You don't need to explain every single detail all at once. Pick your main point and build around it. Stick to one idea at a time, make it easy for people to follow, and give them time to absorb what you're saying. Simplicity is not weakness, it's strength. If you can explain a big idea in a small number of words, that's leadership. Sometimes speaking clearly means repeating your main point once. The minimum discipline is repeating the same main point, not 5 times, just once, and not because you're unsure, but because people need time to grasp what matters. You say it clearly, you pause, you say it again with certainty, and then you move forward. Not in circles, not in loops, straight ahead. You also need to pay attention to how people react when you talk. Watch their eyes, watch their face. Are they confused? Are they distracted? Are they locked in? Your words should pull people in if they're pulling away. Adjust. Real leaders pay attention to feedback in real time and clarify when needed. They ask, does that make sense? Not as filler, but as a genuine check. And if the answer is no, they don't defend. They explain again in a better way. And here's something most people overlook. Your body language is part of your message. It's not just your words. It's your posture, your face, your hands, and your presence. If your words say one thing and your body says something else, people will believe your body. That means standing up straight, facing the person, and showing that you're present, not distracted. It all adds to your clarity. Clear speaking is built through practice, not just in big speeches but in everyday conversations. You train it daily, work on getting to the point, using better words, asking better questions, and improving how you explain your ideas. That's how leaders sharpen their message and earn the right to be heard. So, stop hiding behind complicated language, hoping people will figure out what you meant, or rushing your words hoping they land. Make a new decision today. When you speak, you will speak clearly, with purpose, and so nobody leaves confused about who you are and what you stand for. Speak like your words matter, because they do. Speak like someone who knows where they're going. Speak like someone who's done the work and earned the right to be heard. That's how a leader talks, that's how a leader connects, and that's how a leader builds something real. And that's the kind of person people choose to follow, someone who makes their message clear every single time. Chapter 3. Control your voice before you try to lead. That's not a suggestion, it's a requirement because your voice is more than just sound, it's your presence. Your presence is what sets the tone for your leadership. It's the energy you exude, the stability you project, and the confidence you convey. If your voice isn't steady, your authority will be compromised. People don't just listen to what you say, they listen to how you say it. Your voice is a reflection of your inner world, and if it's chaotic, people will sense it. Leadership begins with how you carry yourself, and your voice is the first thing people notice. You can have the best intentions, a brilliant mind, and strong values, but if your voice falters, people will hesitate to follow you. Why? Because they listen to the tone, the pace, and the conviction behind your words. A leader's voice is a direct reflection of their emotional state, and if you're nervous, angry, or unsure, people will hear it. The more emotional noise you harbor, the harder it becomes to speak with strength and direction. Before you step into a leadership role or try to influence others, you need to learn to control your tone, volume, rhythm, and emotional state. A leader doesn't just talk, they command attention with a steady, calm, and grounded voice that says, "I'm here to guide you, not impress you." That's the difference between a loud, attention-seeking voice and a grounded, authoritative one. A controlled voice inspires confidence and trust. When your voice is steady, people perceive you as calm and reliable, assuring them you won't lose control or succumb to panic. This steadiness fosters trust, which is essential for leadership. A trembling voice, on the other hand, undermines your ability to lead effectively. You can lead with a tone that changes with your mood, but people get tired of following unpredictable voices. They create anxiety, and leadership is not about making people feel anxious. It's about giving them direction they can count on. So, how do you control your voice? The first step is self-awareness. Most people don't even notice how they sound. They've never listened to their tone, recorded themselves, or realized if they speak too fast, too soft, too harsh, or too flat. Take the time to really hear yourself. Are you clear? Are you firm? Do you sound like someone who believes what they're saying, or do you sound like someone hoping to be accepted? The more you know how you sound, the more you can take control of it. You start choosing your tone instead of letting your emotions choose it for you. If you're frustrated, you don't raise your voice. You stay calm and address the issue directly. If you're excited, you don't speed up and lose people. You hold the energy, but stay steady. Leadership demands emotional control, and your voice is where people see it first. Another way to gain control is through breathing. Most people underestimate the importance of breathing when speaking. Shallow breathing leads to fast talking, nervous energy, and shaky delivery. But when you slow your breath down, your voice naturally becomes stronger and deeper. You don't have to push it. It settles, becomes deliberate, and people sense that control before every important conversation, meeting, or decision. You center yourself, breathe, slow everything down internally, and then speak. Control also means knowing when not to speak. A powerful voice isn't just about what you say, it's about what you hold back. If you speak out of impulse, you'll say things you regret, create damage that takes a long time to repair. But if you train yourself to pause, think, and listen, you'll speak fewer words, but they'll carry more weight, and that's what leadership communication is all about. Fewer words, more meaning. Think about the leaders you respect most. They didn't rush through their words, they didn't fumble, they didn't ramble on. They spoke with perseverance, purpose, and every sentence had a job to do. Every word carried meaning. They weren't trying to sound important, they were grounded, and that's what gave their voice authority. That kind of authority doesn't come from titles or volume. It comes from inner strength and discipline, which must be developed. You practice your voice like any other skill. You train it, rehearse it, and refine it. If you speak in public, practice beforehand. Listen to yourself, adjust, and don't just speak off the top of your head. Strong leaders take their communication seriously because they know every word, every tone, and every pause can either build or break what they're trying to convey. Your voice matters in small conversations, one-on-ones, giving feedback, and dealing with conflict. Every moment you speak, people are watching, asking themselves, can I trust this person? Do they mean what they say? Are they in control or unstable? That trust is built or destroyed based on how well you've mastered your tone, message, and energy. If your voice lacks energy, people won't feel your words. You can't motivate people with a dead tone. You can't inspire with flat delivery. You don't need to be loud, but you do need to be alive. Your voice needs to carry belief, show that you care, and be fully present in your words. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how good your ideas are, they'll fall flat. Leadership also means managing your emotional triggers when things go wrong, when people push your buttons, or when situations get intense. You must be able to hold your ground without your voice cracking or rising. If your voice changes every time you're under pressure, people will lose trust in your stability. They may respect your knowledge, but they'll hesitate to follow you when it counts. Control means staying calm, even when things are falling apart. That calmness is what people remember, and it helps others stay steady too. When your voice is trained, your leadership becomes sharper. You speak with focus, lead with presence, and guide with strength. People feel it, and they know they're in the presence of someone who isn't just talking to be heard. They're talking because they have something worth hearing. So, take your voice seriously, not for performance, but for influence. Train it daily, reflect on it, record yourself, ask for honest feedback, and adjust your tone until it reflects strength and clarity. Practice speaking under pressure, holding your ground without shouting, and build the kind of voice that calms people, moves people, and earns respect without ever needing to demand it. Because before anyone will follow you, they will first listen to you. And before they listen to you, they will judge your voice, not your accent, not your vocabulary, but the presence, the energy, and the control behind it. When you exude a sense of purpose and unwavering resolve, people feel a deep sense of security. This confidence is not born out of blind obedience, but rather the conviction that your words are backed by unwavering intent. That's the essence of leadership. Before you ask others to follow, ensure that your voice is a beacon of direction. Not occasionally, nor when it suits you. Every single time, in every setting, and in every moment. Once your voice is steady and resolute, your leadership begins to take shape. Chapter 4: Speaking with Impact. Leadership communication is not merely about articulating your thoughts. It's about inspiring people to take action. It's not about sounding eloquent or impressing others with your vocabulary. It's about conveying a message that sparks movement. A leader's words don't merely fill the air. They awaken people to new perspectives, prompt them to stop and think, and push them to take a step they've been hesitant to take. When you speak as a leader, your words need to possess the power to drive people towards action. Otherwise, you're just another voice in the background, drowned out by the cacophony of opinions, distractions, and advice that surrounds them. People are constantly bombarded with information, but what resonates with them is what evokes a strong emotional response, compelling them to shift out of their comfort zones and into action. That's your job as a leader, to say things that shake people awake without resorting to shouting or empty rhetoric. You must speak in a way that resonates with their core, transcending mere words to touch their very being. This isn't about memorizing lines or regurgitating preconceived notions. It's about communicating from a place of clarity, conviction, and lived experience. Before you attempt to influence others, examine your motivations. Are you driven by a desire to impress or genuinely impact? Are you simply parroting what you've heard, or do you speak from a place of authentic understanding? People can detect the difference between mere information and genuine authenticity. Real words carry weight, convey pressure, and land with authority. When they do, people move. To move others, you must speak directly to their pain points, addressing the frustration and fatigue they've been carrying. However, you must avoid dwelling on the decisions they've been putting off. Instead, focus on the excuses that have been holding them back. You don't need to articulate your thoughts perfectly. You merely need to express them truthfully. The truth may sting, but it also frees people from the grip of soft talk and empty promises. Leaders are not there to coddle or reassure people. They're there to challenge them to grow. They don't need to over-explain or justify their message. A clear, direct statement is often enough. You don't lose momentum by being concise. You merely lose it by diluting your message. People need clarity, not comfort. They need something to hold on to, not something to overthink. If you want to inspire action, give them a solid direction, not vague ideas. Another key factor is urgency. People don't move without a sense of urgency. Your words should convey a sense of imperative, not panic, but pressure. You must show them what's at stake and what they'll lose if they don't take action. That's how you trigger movement, not fear, but truth. The truth is that staying stagnant is often the most perilous decision. When you speak, use language that resonates with your audience. Avoid using jargon or polished phrases that sound like they came from a textbook. Your words should sound authentic, like they're coming from someone who's walked in their shoes and faced their challenges. You don't need perfect grammar or clever sentences. You need to sound genuine. Your tone carries your conviction, and if you don't believe your message, nobody else will. Your life should reflect your message, not undermine it. When it does, your words gain strength without needing volume. People aren't looking for motivation. They're looking for permission to change. They want to know it's okay to leave their comfort zones, to demand more from themselves. Your words can unlock that potential, but only if they're direct, real, and aimed at action. Sometimes, what moves people isn't inspiration, it's confrontation. You say what needs to be said, but not with anger or judgment. You hold up a mirror, and that moment of discomfort becomes the turning point. Many people are waiting for someone to call them higher, not by yelling or guilt, but by saying they're capable of more, and it's time to act like it. Leaders don't chase applause, they chase progress. The room might not cheer, but that's fine. People will think about it, sit with it, and if it's real, they'll move. You're not trying to entertain, you're trying to build something. So speak like someone who takes responsibility for the impact of their words, and never forget that silence can be just as powerful. If your words are strong, you don't need to say much. One sentence followed by silence can do more than a 5-minute lecture. It gives the message room to breathe, and people space to respond internally. You move people by making things simple. Complexity creates hesitation, but when you break something down into a clear next step, people feel empowered. Say it like this: start today, make the call, write it down, fix it now. Don't leave them guessing. You don't need to say more, you need to say it better. When the authenticity of your words shines through, when your voice exudes confidence and conviction, and when your message zeroes in on what truly matters, people stop mindlessly scrolling and start taking action. They break free from indecision and start moving forward with purpose. Communicate in a way that truly resonates. Speak to the part of people that craves more substance, more depth, and more meaning. Speak with enough conviction to rouse them and enough clarity to guide them. That's how you lead. That's how you command attention. That's how you inspire people to move, not with empty noise, but with words that carry weight and authenticity. Those words must flow from a place within you that has been moved, because what drives you is what will drive others. Speak from that place. Speak from your core values. Speak from your scars. Speak from the lessons you've learned the hard way. That's what makes your voice distinct. That's what makes your message impactful. That's what gets people to act. Chapter 5. Use language that commands respect and attention. That's a skill few take seriously, but every leader must master. People don't follow feeble, uncertain, or insincere voices. They follow voices that speak with substance and conviction. Strong words don't mean harsh words. They mean words that convey meaning, carry weight, and demonstrate your right to be heard. Every time you speak, you either build credibility or lose it, either gain attention or get ignored. It all comes down to your word choice. Forgettable words are weak. Remembered words are strong. To communicate like a leader, you must understand the impact your words have, not just their meaning, but their tone, presence, and power. Strong words command attention, not because they're loud, but because they're precise. When you speak with clear, powerful language, people stop and listen. They sense your seriousness. They feel your confidence. You don't have to repeat yourself. You don't have to over-explain. Words spoken with power and clarity can change the direction of a conversation, and in some cases, a life. Weak language creates doubt. When you use phrases like I think, maybe, I guess, or sort of, you dilute your message, strip it of strength, and people stop listening. Strong words are direct. They don't leave room for confusion. They show you've made a decision. You're not offering a suggestion, you're making a statement. And when people hear that kind of certainty, they're more likely to respect your voice. If you're always trying to be soft, trying not to offend, trying to please everyone, you'll end up saying nothing that matters. People respect clarity. They follow someone who speaks the truth, even if it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Strong words are not about being aggressive, they're about being unshakable. You don't raise your voice, you raise your standard. That's what gets people to pay attention. Your word choice reflects your standards. If you settle for mediocrity in your thinking, your words will sound mediocre. But if you demand more from yourself, your words will reflect that. Strong words come from a strong mindset. When your thinking is clear, your language becomes powerful. If you speak with strength, it's because you've built strength inside. You've faced challenges, you've earned your voice. People don't just want to hear information, they want to hear conviction. They want to feel your belief. If your words are filled with doubt, you lose them. But when you speak from your core, when you say things you've lived through, people lock in because they can feel the difference between talk and truth. Talk is easy. Truth takes discipline. When your words are based on truth, people can't ignore you. Using strong words also means cutting out the filler, eliminating the phrases that do nothing. It's like those words weaken your impact. They create noise, and leadership is not about noise, it's about precision. One clear sentence delivered without hesitation is more powerful than a 10-minute speech filled with filler. Say less, but say it better to gain respect. When you speak, you must respect your own words. That means you don't talk just to talk. You don't speak when you haven't thought. Every sentence has a purpose. Every word has intention. That's how people begin to respect you, not just because of what you say, but because of how carefully you say it. Attention is earned. It's not automatic, and it's not about being flashy. It's about being solid. Your words should be like anchors. When you say something, it stays. People carry it with them. They think about it later because it wasn't just a sound, it was a statement. If your words fade as soon as they're heard, you're not leading, you're blending in. The language of leadership is bold, not reckless. It's confident, not arrogant. And it's always clear. Clarity is power. If someone has to ask, "What did you mean by that?" you've already lost them. People follow voices that are easy to understand but hard to ignore. That's the balance between simplicity and strength combined. There's no fluff, no ego, just truth delivered directly. There's one more thing you need to know: strong words must be earned. You can fake them, but if your life doesn't match your message, your words will feel empty. That's why personal discipline matters. That's why living with standards matters. Your voice gains power from your example. When you've lived what you speak, you don't have to convince people. They feel it, they hear it, it's different. You build attention when your words bring value. Every time you speak, ask yourself, is this helping someone think better, act better, live better? If the answer is no, don't say it. Save your energy for what matters. Leaders don't speak to fill time, they speak to shift something. And when your words consistently deliver value, people make space for you. They stop scrolling. They stop moving. They listen. Strong words are also honest, not cruel, but honest. You say the thing that needs to be said. You don't hide behind comfort. You don't dress it up. You tell the truth clearly and directly. Most people avoid this. They speak in circles. They soften everything. But when you talk like a leader, you speak with boldness. You say, this isn't working. You say, this needs to change. You say, here's what has to happen. That kind of clarity builds respect. Not everyone will like it, but they will remember it. And when people remember your words, you become a voice of influence. Not because you forced it, but because you earned it. You spoke with focus, with courage, with precision. That's what sets leaders apart. They don't speak more, they speak stronger. And that strength doesn't come from shouting. It comes from self-control, from thought, from responsibility. Every room you enter is full of voices. When someone speaks with conviction, with authority, and with clarity, everyone stops and listens. That's the goal, not to be the loudest, but to be the one people pause for. Because what you say matters, it has substance, and that's what leadership is all about. And it all starts with how you talk to yourself. If your inner voice is weak, your outer voice will falter too. So, speak strong from within. Ditch the self-doubt, the playing small. Train your mind to think with confidence, and your words will follow. You say, I've got this, I'll make it better, I refuse to be average. When you speak to yourself with strength, you start speaking to the world the same way. Choose your words carefully, speak with conviction, and speak with authority. Cut out the fluff that wastes people's time. Speak to be clear, not to be liked. Speak to make an impact, not just to fill silence. Speak from experience, not from theory. When your words are strong, people feel it. They listen longer, they trust more, and they remember. That's how respect is earned, that's how attention is gained. Not through noise, but through strong, clear, real words that speak directly to what matters. You don't need a crowd to validate you. You don't need approval to be effective. What you need is discipline, belief, and the courage to speak as someone who means every word. That's what leadership sounds like, and that's what people will follow. Not just words, but words that lead. Chapter 6, Drop the weak talk, and speak with real authority. That's the moment everything shifts, not just in your communication, but in your life, because the way you speak reveals how you think, and how you think shapes everything. Weak talk is more than just soft words. It's the habit of speaking from hesitation, from fear, from insecurity. And the longer you speak that way, the more it shapes who you are. It becomes part of your identity. But when you decide to stop using that kind of language and choose to speak with real authority, you don't just sound different, you become different. You become sharper, more certain, and more respected. People know when your voice carries authority, they feel it. Not because you raise your volume, but because your words have a backbone. There's a quiet confidence in your tone. There's intention in your delivery. There's power in your message. And that only happens when you stop watering down your speech with phrases that drain your credibility. You hear weak talk every day. I'm not sure, but hopefully it works out. These phrases slip into conversation, and every time they do, they send a message that you don't fully believe in what you're saying. You may not mean to say that, but that's exactly what people hear. Weak talk undercuts your message before it even lands. It shows doubt, creates distance, and softens your edge. And if you're trying to lead, trying to influence, trying to earn trust, those words will cost you everything. Real authority in your voice begins with eliminating the words that waste your power. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to shrink your opinion to avoid discomfort. You don't need to sound small to be liked. You are not here to be liked. You're here to be clear, strong, and solid. And that starts by dropping every phrase that gives people permission to ignore you. You don't need to say, "I just think." Say it, don't lead with, "Sorry, but you are not sorry for having a point." When you speak with authority, your words stand on their own. You're not pushing them. You're not begging for attention. You're simply saying something real with no apology, no hesitation, no confusion. Authority doesn't mean aggression. You don't need to be harsh to be powerful. You don't need to dominate the room. Real authority is calm, controlled, and steady. It's you speaking from a place of certainty because you know who you are and you know what you're saying matters. You've thought about it. You've earned it. You're not performing. You're delivering something of value. When you speak with authority, people respect you differently. They don't interrupt you as much. They don't question you the same way. They listen longer because strong words hold attention, and attention is currency. It's not given, it's earned. Weak talk loses attention, strong talk earns it. And once you have someone's full attention, that's when you make impact. If you want to lead, you have to decide what kind of voice you're going to use, not the sound, the tone, the structure, the meaning. Will it be padded with disclaimers, softeners, fillers, or will it be sharp, intentional, and exact? The truth is, nobody's going to fix this for you if you've grown up around weak talk. You may have worked in environments where people avoid saying things directly, and you might have picked up those habits. But habits can be unlearned, and this is one habit worth changing. Strong speech starts with internal conviction. If you don't believe in what you're saying, nobody else will. So, build your beliefs, think deeply, challenge your own ideas. Once you've done the work internally, you'll stop needing to defend yourself so much externally. You won't need to sound loud, you'll just need to sound clear, and clarity is a powerful form of authority. People who use weak talk often feel invisible, they feel unheard. But it's not always the world ignoring them, it's the way they present their voice. You train people how to treat your message. If you treat it like it's unsure, optional, vague, they will too. But when you speak with clarity and authority, people pause. They think, they take notice, and your presence grows. There's also a time factor. Weak talk wastes time. You ramble, you go in circles, you add 3 extra sentences when one would do. Strong speech is efficient, it gets to the point, it respects people's time. That's another way strength shows up, in how little you need to say to get your message across, when you stop trying to impress and just focus on the truth. Your voice becomes cleaner, and cleaner voices move faster through the noise. You'll also feel different when you stop using weak talk. There's a shift in your posture, in your energy, in how you enter a room, because you're no longer second-guessing yourself while you speak. You're not editing every sentence in real time. You're not bracing for judgment. You're delivering something solid, and you know it, and that gives you freedom, and that freedom turns into confidence. Weak talk comes from fear, fear of being wrong, fear of being judged, fear of being disliked. But here's the truth. If you try to speak in a way that never offends, never challenges, never demands, then your words will never be taken seriously. And if your words aren't taken seriously, you'll never lead. So, you have to decide, do you want to be liked, or do you want to be effective? You can't do both. Effective leadership isn't about finding comfort in the status quo. It's about driving progress forward, which demands strength in communication. This means stripping away the padding and delivering the message that needs to be heard, but doing so with discipline, focus, and purpose. You don't use strength to push people down. Instead, you use it to elevate them. However, lifting others doesn't mean being overly gentle. Sometimes, strength requires challenge, direction, or even silence. Holding your ground when others want you to fold is a crucial aspect of communication, and it's achieved by dropping weak habits that dilute your presence. You shouldn't wait for the perfect moment to start speaking with more authority. Practice strengthening your voice in daily conversations. Start by eliminating one soft phrase at a time and replace it with something more assertive. For instance, replace "I hope" with "I will," "I guess" with "I've decided," and it might be with "here's what I see." These small changes can have a profound impact on your voice and presence, rewiring your communication to convey a sense of backbone and confidence. Before long, people will notice the change, and you'll begin to operate at a higher level, not because you're shouting or arguing, but because your words carry weight and demonstrate that you've thought through your message. You don't need to win every conversation. You just need to show up with words that have substance and aren't afraid of pushback. When people hear that, they'll stop testing you and start respecting you. That's how strength speaks, calmly, clearly, and with controlled conviction. You speak because you have something real to say, not for approval. The more you speak with confidence and authority, the more your leadership takes root, not because you talk the most, but because when you do talk, people know it matters. To develop this kind of strength, you need to drop the weak talk, cut the noise, and speak with precision. Your words should be rooted in your values and delivered with steady confidence. This isn't something you try to do, it's who you are as a leader. That's what separates real leaders from those who fold under pressure. Anyone can speak with strength when no one is pushing back, but the real test is when your beliefs, words, and decisions are challenged. When someone questions your voice, message, or position, that's when your presence gets tested. That's when you find out what your voice is really made of. The world doesn't give you silence, it gives you resistance, and your ability to lead depends on how well you stay solid when that resistance shows up. Most people crack as soon as they feel discomfort, but leaders don't. They stay planted in their clarity, even when others don't agree with them. Leadership isn't about getting people to agree with you, it's about standing in your truth, even when they don't. You don't speak to be popular, you speak because what you have to say matters. And if it matters, you don't let pressure change it. People will test you, guaranteed, but you have a choice. Stay planted in your clarity or get dragged into their doubt. If you get shaken every time someone questions you, you won't last long. In leadership, you'll end up becoming whatever people want you to be, but that's not leadership, that's insecurity in disguise. To hold your ground, you need to know what you stand for. If you haven't thought that through, pressure will expose you. Clarity gives you stability, and if you've done the work to define your values, message, and direction, then when the pressure comes, you won't panic or scramble. You'll stay anchored in what you've built inside. You can't borrow strength in those moments. You can't copy someone else's confidence. It has to be yours, built from repetition, experience, and speaking. When it's hard, that kind of strength doesn't show up automatically. You train it. You develop it every time you stay calm when someone pushes back, every time you stand firm in what you believe. Leaders don't yell to prove they're solid. They speak with calm certainty. That tone cuts through the noise better than any argument. People respect what doesn't flinch. If you change your tone every time the room shifts, people will stop trusting you. They may smile at you and agree with you to your face, but inside, they know they can't rely on you. Respect is earned when your message holds steady under pressure, when you say the same thing, even when it's uncomfortable. When your face doesn't change just because someone's raising their voice, that's leadership. You have to be okay with being uncomfortable, willing to be the one in the room who doesn't bend when everyone else is looking for a way out. That doesn't mean you're stubborn, it means you're steady. You've thought things through, and you don't need every person in the room to agree with you before you speak with strength. There will be moments where your voice shakes a little, but that's normal. You're human, but you still speak, still hold your position, and still stay rooted in your truth. You don't run from the tension, you meet it head on. You show others that disagreement doesn't scare you, that challenge doesn't throw you off, and that someone else's doubt won't make you question yourself. That's how leadership becomes visible, not when you say something inspiring, but when you stay strong. When someone tries to push you off center, it's not always loud. Sometimes, it's subtle. A raised eyebrow, a smirk, a dismissive look, or a sharp question designed to trip you up. You don't respond with emotion. You don't overreact. You stay even, hold your tone, and stay respectful. But you don't move. You don't need to attack to protect your position. You just stay rooted, because when your voice is built on truth and discipline, it doesn't need defending. It stands on its own. You'll feel it when someone's trying to shake your ground. The energy shifts, the room tightens. That's the moment most people start shrinking, but that's your opportunity to rise, not with louder words, but with more grounded energy. And people notice when someone speaks and doesn't flinch, when someone stands their ground without being defensive, when someone keeps their message clear even when the pressure is high. That's the kind of communication people follow, not because it's perfect, but because it's solid. Real strength in communication isn't found in what you say, it's found in how you speak. When you remain steadfast, you convey a valuable lesson. They learn that you're not easily swayed by external factors. They discover that your words are rooted in substance, not fleeting emotions or reactions. When you speak, your words carry weight, and people are drawn to that presence. It's not about being the most charismatic or popular. It's about exuding authenticity. You don't owe an explanation to everyone. Some individuals are looking to argue or provoke, not engage in meaningful discussions. That's not your responsibility. Your duty is to stay grounded in what truly matters. You shouldn't feel the need to justify yourself to every critic. You don't have to chase approval or beg for support. Instead, you deliver your message with conviction, allowing its impact to unfold as it may. There's a quiet strength in standing firm, even in the face of disagreement. You don't have to say much. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remain calm and unyielding. That silence can be more eloquent than 100 explanations, conveying a sense of stability and conviction. When you consistently demonstrate this resilience, you become unshakable, not arrogant or dismissive, but rooted in your convictions. This is what sets your leadership voice apart, not its volume, but its conviction, not its emotion, but its clarity, not its control, but its consistency. In a world filled with noise and people vying for attention, someone who speaks with conviction and holds the line stands out. They're not just a voice, they're a source of trust, clarity, and authority. People return to those who consistently deliver their message with strength and conviction, not because they always say what others want to hear, but because they always say what's real. You won't always receive applause, and that's not the goal. The goal is respect, impact, and strength. So, the next time someone tries to shake you, don't let it work. Don't adjust your voice to match their emotions, speed up, or shrink. Hold your tone, pace, and clarity. That's how trust is built, presence is established, and real leaders are recognized, not by how they speak when it's easy, but by how they stay strong when it's not. You hold your ground, and people begin to believe in you, not just your words, but you as a person. Once they trust you, you don't just become someone who talks, you become someone who leads. Chapter 8 is about making your point without dragging or over-explaining it. This is a habit every strong communicator must develop, as leadership value isn't measured by how much you say, but by how well you say it. You don't need long speeches to be credible, nor do you need to repeat yourself to be clear. You don't need unnecessary examples to ensure people understand you. When you speak with clarity, one sentence is enough. When your thoughts are organized, you don't ramble, and when your presence is strong, you don't rely on volume or length. You rely on precision. People don't have unlimited attention, and most are distracted before you even begin. So, when you speak, you're competing with their inner dialogue, phone, worries, and everything else vying for their focus. If you drag out your message or keep circling the point, they'll start to tune out, and when they do, you lose influence, not because your idea isn't good, but because it got lost in too many words. There's a big difference between being thoughtful and being long-winded. Thoughtful is direct, clear, and structured, while long-winded is messy, slow, and uncertain. The more words you use, the more chances you have to weaken your message, as every extra sentence adds a layer that might confuse the listener. That's why real communicators trim the excess, say what matters, and stop talking to let the message land. Explaining is often a symptom of doubt. When people aren't sure of their message, they keep adding to it, trying to protect it with more details or control how others receive it. But leadership doesn't work that way. You can't control how people feel. You can only control how you deliver. If you deliver with confidence and clarity, you don't need a backup explanation. You say it, trust it, and let it speak for itself. Another reason people over-explain is because they fear being misunderstood. They think more words will make things safer, but more words don't always equal more understanding. Sometimes they make things worse. When you say too much, your main idea gets buried, and your listener starts picking up on side comments, missing the purpose. And then you've created confusion where there could have been clarity. Leadership communication is about clarity, not control. Say the truth and let it stand on its own. If you want to be listened to consistently, you need to become someone who doesn't waste time, not your time, and not anyone else's. People should know when you speak, they're going to get value, hear something that matters, and walk away with a clear understanding, which only happens when you discipline yourself to get to the point and stay on it. Getting to the point doesn't mean being cold or harsh. It means you care enough about people's time to be efficient with your words. It means you've taken the time to think through what needs to be said and what doesn't. It means you're not speaking to fill space. You're speaking to create movement. You also build respect by being concise. When you make your point and stop talking, people lean in, because they're used to people going on and on. There's strength in being brief. The more certain you are, the less you need to say. If you're secure in your message, you don't need to pile on words. You deliver it and stand behind it. The power comes from simplicity and the discipline to say just enough, not too much. That takes work, practice, but it's worth it, because the ones who master that skill become the voices people turn to when clarity is needed most. You should never feel the need to convince everyone. That's where most over-explaining comes from, the need to be accepted. But leadership is not about trying to be accepted. It's about delivering what's necessary. Some will agree, some won't. That's fine. You don't need everyone to approve of your message. You need the right people to understand it, and that only happens when you don't dilute it with extra layers. When you speak, ask yourself, what's the purpose of this sentence? If what you're saying isn't propelling the conversation forward, it's time to cut it. If your words are intended to soften the blow, rethink them. If your intention is to protect your ego, replace them with something more authentic. Speak with conviction, clarity, and purpose. That's what people want to hear. Not a watered-down version of your truth, but the real thing, spoken simply and with courage. Every time you speak, you're teaching people how to listen to you. If you ramble, they'll tune out. If you're sharp and concise, they'll lean in. If you repeat yourself unnecessarily, they'll assume you don't trust them to understand. But if you say something powerful once and stop talking, they'll think about it, respect you more, and listen more closely the next time. Don't confuse clarity with simplicity. You can be clear and still speak deeply. You can say something profound in a short sentence. In fact, the more important your point, the more pressure there is to make it clean, because complexity hides the impact. Simplicity reveals it. Think about the strongest voices you've ever heard. The ones who moved you didn't give 10 examples or talk in circles. They made a clear point with calm strength and stopped. That pause after a strong statement creates space for the message to settle, letting the listener reflect and make an impact. That's where the magic happens, not while you're still talking, but in the space you leave after. Understanding your audience is also crucial. If you're speaking to people who already know the topic, don't over-explain or over-teach. Respect their intelligence and speak to the next level. If you're speaking to those unfamiliar with your topic, explain only what they need to know, not everything you know. Don't overwhelm them, guide them. Real communication isn't about saying everything. It's about saying the right thing at the right time, in the right way. That means trimming, cutting, and sharpening your words before you speak. Clarify your point in your mind, know where you're going before you open your mouth, and that internal clarity will translate to external confidence, making your message land. There's no prize for speaking the longest or using the most words. The reward comes from being understood, making an impact, and helping someone think better, move faster, or decide sooner. That happens when you deliver your point with strength and discipline, stripping away the extras and trusting your message to do its job. When you speak with purpose, you're not just trying to be heard, you're trying to be remembered. That's where real influence begins. Talking is easy, everybody talks, but being remembered is different. It takes purpose, intention, and discipline. People hear thousands of words a day, but only a few stay with them. The ones that stay are the ones that meant something, were clear, direct, and delivered with weight. When you talk like a leader, you don't just want to fill the air, you want to leave a mark, make your words stay with people long after you've left the room. To be remembered, you have to say something worth remembering. That means cutting out the shallow talk, speaking from a place of substance, and delivering it with strength. Your voice is your signature, and people will remember how you made them feel, what you made them stop to think about, or what standard you set for them. That's what being remembered is all about. To be remembered, you need to be clear about what you believe. People remember conviction, certainty, and authenticity. If you're unsure, your message will fade. But if you speak from what you live, what you know, and what shaped you, it sticks. You don't need to speak louder, you need to speak real. That's what cuts through the noise. You don't need perfect sentences to make an impact. You need truth, raw, tested, and real truth. You need a message that's simple but strong. Don't complicate what should be clear, and don't try to sound impressive. Say it how people talk, think, and live, so they can carry it with them into their day. The easier your message is to repeat,